Hi, Garland Nixon here. We're going to talk about Joe Biden's foreign policy. There's some alarming trends going on, and we got lots to talk about. Hey, Garland Nixon here to talk about a little bit more, my favorite subject, foreign policy. And we're going to talk about the Biden team, what's happening with them, some alarming things going on, but not actually. So let me put it a bit differently. Some things going on that I'm not happy about, but I'm not going to call them alarming. I'm not alarmed at what's going on because, as you probably know, it was easy to predict. All right. So what's the latest happening? Got a couple stories. Here's one. Iraqi officials ready to push for ouster of U.S. troops. Iraqi parliament wants decision on troop pullout by end of April. This is from antiwar.com. January, Iraq's parliament unanimously called for the U.S. to leave Iraq. President Biden hasn't weighed in on this, but the matter is likely to come to a head in April talks. All right. So what's happening? So, of course, going on 20 years with that one too. 2003, the United States invaded Iraq and subsequently has occupied Iraq ever since. We were told that there was an agreement made for the United States to leave initially in 2009. That agreement was made under the Bush administration. The Obama administration then said, we're going to leave by 2009. In 2009, they said, hooray, we've ended the war, but we got thousands of troops there. We've left Iraq, but we still got thousands of troops there. We've since done horrible things, such as their second largest city of Mosul. Look online for pictures of Mosul, Mosul. We have bombed Mosul to the ground, flat, killed unknown tens of thousands of people there. The usual terrible stuff that we do in the Middle East. Also, after the killing of Qasem Soleimani, the Iraqi general, many people don't know one of the things that happened. He was in a convoy of cars, including in that convoy of cars. What the heck have I got going on here? Including that convoy of cars was a famous Iraqi general, a beloved guy who was also killed. So the U.S. killed an Iranian general, the most beloved figure, period, political, whatever, in Iran. And they also killed a beloved Iraqi general, and the Iraqis took a vote. Their parliament voted 170 to nothing for the United States to leave. They delivered the letter to Mike Pompeo, who then said, we look forward to being here a long time. In other words, we're occupying Iraq. What do you call it when a country asks you to leave and you say no? What do you call it? That's called an occupation. So we're occupying Iraq against their will. We're occupying Afghanistan against their will, and we're occupying Syria against their will. Okay, so the U.S. is occupying country after country, and pretty brutally and aggressively, I might add. So recently, what happened? Well, there are any number of groups in Iraq that don't want the U.S. there. One of those groups fired some rockets into a U.S. compound, and apparently a contractor, mercenary, whatever you want to call him, was killed. Joe Biden then said, well, I must retaliate, and he bombed Syria. And he bombed some, they weren't sure who did it, but he bombed the group that they blamed for it, right? They scapegoated. Whether they did it or not, I don't know. But these weren't even these was a group hundreds of miles away. So they went hundreds of miles away and did a bombing, and then said, and by the way, that's a message to Iran. It was just pure mad warmongering, right? Killed 17 people. Okay. So needless to say, the Iraqis aren't happy. Would you be? So they're bombing and killing Iraqis in Iraq. We're occupying Iraq and we're bombing and killing Iraqis. And shock, the Iraqis want us to leave. But that ain't happening. Why is that happening? Because we're not a nation. If we were a nation, we would have been gone. We are an empire. We're not leaving Iraq. And here's my evidence. Have we left Germany? 1945, that war was over. We still got troops there. Oh, by the way, 1945, that war was over. And we still got troops in Japan. 53, 52, that war was over. We still got troops in Korea. Anybody that thinks we're leaving Iraq or anyone else, any place else is out of their mind. Donald Trump apparently wanted to leave Iraq, but the system stopped him. One of the only good things that Donald Trump really wanted to do, and the system said, no, you're not allowed to do that. So now we've got Joe Biden, and the problem is Joe Biden is a system person. He's part of this machine, this in the U.S. empire machine, and he understands the rules. And the rules are we're an empire. We've conquered that land. We've got bases there, etc. And hey, we ain't leaving. And so what happens is if somebody attacks us and tries to force us out, that's used. Well, we know we can't leave now because they're attacking us. We must defend ourselves. And as my martial arts instructor always said, they can't hit you if you ain't there. Right. So if the first sign of trouble, get out of Dodge, because they can't hit you if you ain't there. They can't attack U.S. soldiers if the U.S. soldiers are at Fort Meade, Maryland. Right. They can't attack them if they open Fort McClellan back up and say, hey, guys, back to Fort McClellan. I guess they won't be shooting rockets at them in Fort McClellan, in Erbil or Mosul or any other part of Iraq. Right. But that's the problem. OK, so that's part of it. Number one, the Iraqis want us to leave and we ain't leaving. And Joe Biden's basically mums the word. Imagine that. Imagine that. Garland Nixon is sitting on your sofa and like everybody around the house is like, how are we going to get Garland? You know, Garland, we really would like you to leave. And I'm like, la, 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 la. I ain't leaving. I've decided to occupy your home. And so that's what Biden's doing. We're occupying Iraq. Now, let's move on to our next story. Our next story is Biden continues to slowly back away from Afghanistan peace deal. Reluctant to state policy, Biden seems to put off peace until next year. Are you noticing a pattern? Let's go back to the Iraq story. U.S. officials aren't saying anything. Let's go to the Iran war, the Afghanistan story. Reluctant to state policy, Biden seems to put off. Bottom line is this. And see, that's the thing about being an empire. That's the thing about the state of affairs with our government right now anyway. And that is our policies. Think about this. Our government really can't talk about the policies. Our government really can't tell you about the policies because you wouldn't like it and you would oppose it, and they wouldn't be able to execute them. So it's not that Joe Biden's leaving Afghanistan. He ain't ever. It ain't that Joe Biden's leaving Iraq. Never, not happening. It's not that Joe Biden's leaving Syria. Never. But Joe Biden can't come out and say to you, well, we're illegally occupying Syria. We're starving the Syrian people in a way that's merciless and more horrible than any human being. We're starving men, women, and children. People are dying because they can't get their medicine. And it's all our fault. No, he can't say that. He has to just tell you a bunch of lies. So you'll go along with it. And you'll be like, well, at least Trump's gone now. But the people that we're starving to death, our horrible, vicious warmonger empire policies have not gone anywhere. Donald Trump, it had nothing to do with him. They were here before Trump left, and they'll be probably worse now that he's gone. And if you know me, I am no Trump fan, but the problem is this is not about Trump. This is about a warmongering empire that we are, that I am unwittingly a part of. Okay. So what we've got now is in Afghanistan, there had been a deal that had been bargained, that had been struck with the Taliban, and it was, we're out of here May 1st. And that was under the Biden people, because Trump did want to. The fact of the matter, Trump wanted to get out of Afghanistan. So now the Biden people have come in and they pretty much said, nah, we're not leaving by May 1st. And when the question is how long, well, I can't see us being here next year. In other words, now think about this. That's the guy who told us he was going to give us $2,000 and then it turned into $1,400, right? That's the guy. Biden has not exactly been, sticking by his campaign trail policy. He's been pretty much Trump when it comes to that. We're going to do the $15 an hour minimum wage. You ain't getting that. Going right back into that Iranian nuclear deal. Maybe, probably not. One thing after another with Biden, he's just reneging on all of his promises because he's Joe Biden. And I mean, that's, if you understand his history, that's what you were getting. For those of you who were like, yay, Trump's gone. Yeah, Trump's gone. You got what you wanted. Trump was terrible, fascist, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, if you think you got a prize in Joe Biden, you are sorely mistaken. He's problematic. And last but not least, something you need to keep an eye on, and that's Ukraine. Why would I say that? Because I don't know, because it's on Russia's border, and between the United States and Russia, they have 95% of all nuclear weapons in the world. And if the U.S. starts a war with Russia or China, every war game scenario or military scenario in which the U.S. engaged in a military conflict with either Russia or China, every war game ended up with a nuclear exchange and the end of the world of humankind. Think about that. Think about that. I'm going to do another a video on that easily, but think about that. That means that the Biden administration is the most dangerous administration in the history of humankind. They have started a fight with China and Russia. China and Russia. Not one, not two, both of them. And right now, the Biden administration, since Ukraine, the U.S. overthrew Ukraine in 2014, and it's basically a proxy nation, it's box, okay, then the U.S. is now in Ukraine on the border of Russia, and there's like some troop buildup and all this kind of crap, and they're trying, like, there's a little bit of there's a internal war going on where the Ukrainian government and the eastern Ukraine, which is on the Russian border, there are a lot of Russian speaking people. 20% of the people there have Russian passports. They're Russian speakers, and the Ukrainians are kind of oppressing them. They're threatening them with military. The Russians have said, look, we're not going to let you come in here and kill these people. If you think you're going to overrun them, the Russian army is sitting there. So the Ukraine army is building up military more people and more material on the Russian border, where there's a bunch of Russian people that the Russians have already said they're going to they will protect them. So if the Ukrainians were to launch any kind of offensive, the question wouldn't be whether or not the Russian army would crush them. The question would be, would the Russian army just crush them, or would the Russian army crush them and go all the way to Kiev and just take the country, which they could do without even, I mean, there's not a speed bump there. We're talking about the Russian military. We ain't talking about Iraq, okay? We're talking about a real military. So that would be over really quick. And the U.S., no doubt, is behind that. So if the U.S. under the Biden administration is stirring up military conflict on Russia's border, there could be no greater danger that they could subject us to, and not just us, all humankind. Think about that. It's like this. Okay, an example. There's this place out in Harford County. There's a place out in Harford County, King and Queen seat, that I used to go to. The bottom line is I had a lot of area of the state that I was in charge of, and that was one of the parks. And I went over there to go for a tour. I was taken for a tour of the park. And I saw this King and Queen seat, and people are wandering around on the rocks, and I'm looking, and if you look over the side of these rocks, it was a cliff like a Wile E. Coyote cliff. I mean, a cliff like, this is what it's like. You look over the side, way, way, way down there, you see the tops of the trees. I mean, like little ants, the tops of the trees. That's how far you are up, right? So that being said, I'm like, why do people wander around on these rocks? If you make a mistake, the cost is too high. You lose everything. These people got to be idiots. Why in the heck would you go wandering around, walking around on the edge of a cliff? You fall off, you're dead, right? It's not smart, right? That's why you don't give a baby a butcher knife to play with. It's not smart. You don't take those kind of chances. The risks are too high. Let me add this. That's why you don't get involved in a military conflict on the border of a nuclear armed nation. Because if something goes bad, there ain't no YouTube anymore. There ain't no nothing. All of this stuff that we developed over the course of years, it's irrelevant in a matter of hours. Everybody's dead. Everything that was ever here, maybe 100 years from now, a spaceship lands and some alien walks over and finds something on the ground and says, look at this, an old burnt up rainbow flag. I wonder what that was meant. Because the Biden administration will tell you they're for gay rights. They're for rights for the people of color, which is a lie. They're for this, blah, 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 blah. And they put us all in a position to be burnt to a crisp. How absurd is that? And right now, most Americans don't even have any idea. Ukraine couldn't find it on a map. Most Americans don't know that right now the Biden administration is ginning up a military conflict. They're like, the Biden administration is going to send weapons to the Ukrainian military to protect themselves from Russia. Look. Don't be misled. That's a lie. The Ukrainian military can't protect themselves from Russia. The Russian military is too powerful. It's absurd. They're not even a speed bump for the Russian army. So the idea that you're sending weapons to the Ukrainian army to protect itself from the Russian army is in and of itself absurd, because there ain't no weapons you could give them, because they'd be overrun in a matter of hours. The Russian army is far too powerful. It's superior militarily, technologically, numerically, in every way, shape, or form. It's the Russian army. The Ukrainians get wiped out in hours. It's a joke. So the idea that the only solution, I'll put it like this. If we had a dispute with Canada on our border, the only solution would be diplomatically. I don't care how many weapons you gave the Canadians, they couldn't protect themselves from the US military for 1 second. That's what we're talking about. Ukraine is on the border of Russia, and the only question would be, would Russia go all the way to Kiev and take the country? Which they could if they chose, and nobody could stop them, including us. So all that being said, what's the point of ginning up that trouble? See, the crazies that we have running our foreign policy now are like, we're going to confront Russia on their border, and they're just stirring up trouble. But what they're playing with is everything. You know what they're gambling with? They're gambling with it all. Because if this goes bad and we end up at war with Russia or China, because right now Russia and China have clearly created a strategic alliance, and it looks to me, if you go to war with one, you're going to war with the other. And the U.S. thinks they have a navy. The navy's of no value in this day and age, because the Russians and the Chinese have missile technology that is so high. You're talking supersonic missiles. What our ships are a bunch of floating caskets. That's all they really are. This is World War II stuff. Really, a destroyer nowadays with hypersonic missiles. How long is it going to last? Minutes until the hypersonic missile. Oh, great. There's a missile coming in at 10,000 miles an hour. Gee, how are we going to stop that? You ain't. Oh, no, there's 100 of them coming in. What are you going to do? You're going to get blown to bits. So the reality is, if a war were to start with Russia and China, we'd lose our navy in hours. And then what? That's why every wargaming scenario, when the U.S. is involved in war with Russia or China, every scenario ends in nuclear war, because the technology is too high now to use traditional. You look at this. We've got all of these aircraft carriers. They'd be all blown to smithereens with hypersonic missiles. So it's absurd. So right now, we got to make 4 years of this. We've only had a couple months. The Biden administration is adding troops to Syria. First of all, what are we doing in Syria? It's illegal. The Syrian government says we're not supposed to be there. It's illegal. International law says. The U.S. Can you imagine right now if China just ships into New Jersey, say Weehawken, and they just said, we're going to drop some troops into Weehawken. We decided it's ours. And we said, leave. Nah, we ain't doing that. That's what we did in Syria. We just sent a bunch of troops into the oil fields. We took over the oil fields. We're now pumping the oil fields, looting and selling the oil illegally. That's a fact. That's what we're doing. We're involved in piracy. And the people of Syria are starving. We have they're so-called Caesar sanctions. So we're sanctioning the people of Syria, starving them to death, stealing their oil, occupying their country. Can you get more evil than that? What do we have? The book of evil? And it's like, hey, let's see a list of evil things. Starving people? Check. Occupying their oil fields? Check. We're just going down the list of evil. It's pretty horrible. So that's where we are now. I just wanted to touch base with you on that and talk a little bit about the Biden foreign policy. It is a horror. It is a horror. And the other thing is China. So there's the Taiwan, an island off the coast of China that China says is ours. It's interesting. There was it was always a part of China. There was a bit of a civil war kind of thing. And the people who lost and ran off, they crossed the Taiwan Strait, they went to Taiwan and they set up shop over there. And so China says, no, that's really still ours. Well, that's their dispute. We really shouldn't be in it. But the US says, no, Taiwan really is. So, and if the China tries to retake Taiwan, we'll fight. Let me ask you this. Do you think that most Americans want to get involved in a war that every single war game scenario ends in a nuclear war over Taiwan? Do you think most Americans can find Taiwan? Do you think Americans are like, well, let me tell you something. I love my kids, my family, my grandmother, all of them. Oh man, my uncle, the guy that I'm really good friends. I got a bowling league and I've all these friends. Oh, I have a lot of friends. But if all of them have to die for at the same time, if everyone I ever known, if my DNA has to be cut off here, my children, every one of them dead, girlfriend, boyfriend, wife, whoever you got, every single one of them, if every single one of them must die just for us to protect Taiwan, hey, I'm down with that. Do you think there's any Americans that's going to say that? Yeah, we got to protect, even if we got to go to nuclear war and all human beings get wiped out. If it's about protecting Taiwan now, I think it's worth it. You're not going to find a single American that says that. That's the government that you have. The government that's now saying there's a group of islands, man-made islands, right? And China says they're theirs. Japan says they're there. Just a small group of islands, right? Now the U.S. is saying if China tries to do anything, nobody even lives on them. So the U.S. is like, well, if China tries to do anything with these islands, we'll protect them. So now we're going to go to war to defend a bunch of freaking islands that there's nothing but seagulls on them. And you and everybody you know, everybody you've ever met, everybody you ever will meet has to die. All of them, everybody. No one, nothing on this green earth reminding humankind has to die because the Chinese might take some stinking islands off the coast of Japanese that none of us could find on a map. That's the government that you have. That's the government that you have. We already know that when it comes to fiscal policy, they ain't doing nothing for us. And now you got to know when it's foreign policy, not only are they not doing anything, they're putting you and everybody you know's lives in danger, giving you propaganda. Oh, the Chinese are up to no good. Really? In the Straits of China? That ain't the Straits. That's not the Gulf of Mexico. That's not the East Coast. That's not the Chesapeake Bay or the Hudson River. We're talking about the Straits of Taiwan, about the China Sea. Well, it's named China for a reason, because it's near China. Most Americans really don't care about that crap. But the people that run this country don't care about us or what we want, so they're not going to listen to us anyway. And you know what's going to happen? We're just not going to know about it. We're going to turn on MSNBC, Fox, CNN, and they're going to remind us that China and Russia are evil. They're going to bring in some guy from some think tank who's getting millions of dollars from the arms industry to tell us how we must protect Taiwan and whatever the freaking name of those islands off the coast of Japan. Yes, if we all got to die, as long as those islands are protected, we'll all be dead, but at least the Chinese won't have them. Think about that. That's kind of what they're saying. Well, if we got to make a decision that all humankind's going to die, or those islands, whatever the name they are, we'll go with all humankind dying, because that's what all scenarios point to. That is, it raises some real questions, doesn't it? It does raise some for me. But at any rate, I ain't raising any more questions. I wanted to chat with you for a few minutes. That's been 23 minutes, and I guess that must be long enough. I want to thank everybody. If you want to get in touch with me, at Garland Nixon on Twitter, Garland.Nixon on Instagram. Please follow me on Twitter. Garland.Nixon on Instagram, plain old Garland Nixon on Facebook, and most importantly, go to my YouTube channel, Garland Nixon, and make sure you subscribe and make sure you click the little bell so you have notifications, and share my stuff with all your friends and relatives and on all your Facebook platforms. Thank you very much. I think I might be